Hello, I'm here to speak about corporate social responsibility, a strategy for peace and hope. This is a narrative at once personal and social of intentions coming together to forge a path towards the collective goal of empowerment. And I'm going to start with a little narrative, a little experience that I had while I was working in Kashmir for a CSR initiative. It was an idyllic day in Kashmir, 8th July 2016. I sat in the CHINAR JAWAN CLUB along with a lot of my girl students, learners, who were there to learn about fashion designing. And we were having a discussion that why fashion designing? Kashmir is known for its firans, its embroideries, the shawls. So I was having a conversation with them, why fashion designing? The young girl like you and me, even in a valley which is infested with terrorists and inflicted with terrorism, has the same dream. So they wanted to do something beyond firans and shawls. And while we are having this conversation and eating our lunch, we hear a blast. And then suddenly, like stones being dropped on a tinned roof, there were gunshots. Burhan Wani, the commander of a Kashmir militant group, Hizbul Mujahideen, was shot dead by the security forces in Kashmir that day. And we were caught in violence and protests that followed his death. I was at the base camp. I was at the Uri border, which is like a stone's throw away from the line of control. I was air evacuated from Uri to get to the bigger base camp, which is Baramulla, where I was stranded for 5 days. On the 6th day, they decided that they will make me leave for the Srinagar airport because the violence was going on and it wasn't, the army had no idea how much protests will go on and when will it end. So we decided that they decided the plan was to be part of the convoy that passed the Baramulla base camp at 3:30 a.m. Why 3:30 a.m.? Because the first prayers or the azan happens at around that time, 3:34. So it was a safe time because it was the prayer times to escape to Srinagar. As luck would have it, when the army men came to pick me up, I got very nervous. I had to use the bathroom a couple of times. So before we went out, we were already delayed by 45 minutes, and the convoy was ahead of us by 45 minutes. So here I am in a civilian jeep with 2 army men dressed in civilian clothes, 1 driver and the other guard, trying to tell me to memorize a name, Ruqayya, that your name is Ruqayya, you're a tourist in Kashmir. And because of the protest and the violence, you have come to visit a friend in Patan, to stay with your friend in Patan, and you're going back. Because they don't hurt the tourists. That's their bread and butter. As this was going on, I saw a group of people and tires burning on the road. And the guy is telling me, you remember, don't give your name, do not say that you came to the army base camp or you're doing a project on the line of control. As we passed, we ran through that burning tires and we passed, and the dawn was happening. I could see people getting out. It was like a subtle dream, people getting out, buying milk and eggs and bread, and going right back in. We met the convoy in 45 minutes, half an hour. I don't remember. And the convoy escorted me to the airport, and I took off. I was boarded on a plane, and as the plane took off, my last thought was that of the girls that I was speaking to 5 days back, about the dreams that they had, about the shattered dreams that they had. How would they be feeling in this? They had already been in the course for 3 months, and how would they be feeling in this? So, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mayuri, and I invite you to walk through a unique social program that demonstrates the potential of corporate social responsibility initiative in India. And I have a story to tell you. And this story is of how these pieces of embroidery came about, and the actors and the stakeholders that were instrumental in their creation. We will have the picture soon. This is also a story of the unfolding of CSR mandate, its potential to impact lives, and its adaptability to diverse ground realities. Finally, this is a story of my personal relationship with the idea and implementation of CSR, corporate social responsibility, of creating synergy between the government development goals and the effective implementation and CSR initiatives. As you all would know, and if not, I would love to tell you that in 2013, India became the first country in the world to mandate corporate social responsibility. And I was fortunate enough to be part of the team that helped bring about this legislation in the country. I had the privilege to author the first national academic content and the policy-making framework for corporate India to report CSR initiatives to the government. What was the intent of this law? This law was giving businesses an opportunity to contribute in nation building by supplementing the government's efforts through their CSR initiatives. Which brings me to what I was doing in Kashmir. As somebody who has been part of the CSR process since its inception, I welcome the opportunity to test the intent of this law in one of the most challenging environments in the country today, the terrorism-scarred valley of Kashmir. Like I said, this law was giving businesses an opportunity in nation building. In layman language, what it means, there are many good initiatives, development initiatives started by the government, which do not always come out with a desired result. The outcome is not as expected. Definitely, seriously, there is something not right, or there are many gaps, whether you take Swachh Bharat, Namami Gange, Operation Sadbhavna, huge crores of monies are spent, and they are not able to come up with the desired outcome. So this law, what it does is ask the corporate to take, there is a financial calculation, 2% of their annual profit, and put them in social projects. Why? Because corporates are citizens too. It is their duty to provide to the social and the environment in which they operate. So the idea is to make CSR projects, identify the gaps in the government projects, make CSR projects to fill those gaps, and plug them in so that together there is a successful story without reinventing the wheel. And the outcome is both for the government and for the corporate to share. Again, coming back to what I was doing in Kashmir. So Kashmir is a very complex, the Valley of Kashmir is a minefield of despair and deprivation, of a dim future where dreams are almost never fulfilled. Women and children are the worst victim, both of patriarchy that never prioritizes them and of political instability that breeds violence. The Indian state has been fighting insurgency in Kashmir since 1948. This is a long war of attrition. As the security forces, particularly the Indian Army, engage in counter-terrorism through military tactics, they also understand the critical need to engage with the society and to rebuild the community. So then, as an effort to reinstate or rebuild the community where they are fighting through military tactics, the government launched Operation Sadbhavna to rehabilitate the war-struck people, to rehabilitate the victims of terror. Operation Sadbhavna is India's counter-insurgency practice, a social outreach program launched in the rural areas near the line of control, where insurgency and militancy has caused destruction to property, and there is a sense of alienation amongst the people living there. Sadbhavna's focus has been on filling the gaps in areas that impact life the most, like education, healthcare, especially reproductive healthcare, for the rural people. In the last 2 decades, Sadbhavna has established schools, provided medical aid, built roads, bridges as part of its national integration initiative. But one of the main things that the army and the Indian government want is to develop skills of the people, of the Kashmiri youth, that will eventually ready them to be employed so that they are able to counter terrorism through employment and through positive engagement of the youth there. What was my role there? My role here was to build this intention and create a concrete strategy involving all key stakeholders to come out with a sustainable plan of action. That's where we came in, me and my organization, SHAKTISHI. We became the consultant to the Indian Army for Operation Sadbhavna to implement social welfare projects with the help of CSR funds. So SHAKTISHI has facilitated the establishment of CHINAR JAWAN CLUB, a multifaceted skill development node at the 19 Artillery Brigade in Baramulla. The club offers training in a number of skill sets like hospitality, fashion designing, retail, computer, hardware, to the residents of Baramulla and the neighboring cities. Rationale was that if engaged in sustained income generating activities, the youth will have little motivation or no motivation to participate in a disruptive, destabilizing violence, the culture of violence that is there. The army was ready to provide the infrastructure. The challenge was to build this intention to a strategy with a sustained outcome. It was felt that Operation Sadbhavna could benefit from the resources and specific skill sets available with the corporates. So there was an opportunity to align CSR with the national priority of inclusive development and national security in a conflict zone. Given the grave situation on ground, it was imperative to make optimum use of resources with dynamics and intuitive strategizing. SHAKTISHI recognized the opportunity to bring on broad stakeholders whose distinctive contribution could be dovetailed into the vision behind Operation Sadbhavna, and to reel in a potential CSR donor or a funder for any event, for that matter even for this event, one has to really convince them. The entire strategy was, here I was trying to create a strategy, a cohesive strategy to come together. So the challenge was to define what I called the WIFM, what's in it for me, for each stakeholder that was involved in this process. And let me demonstrate how the CSR initiative became a catalyst for the positive change by taking a look at fashion designing, a course quite popular with the young women. Fashion designing requires stitching and tailoring skills as well as aesthetics and imagination. So the first stakeholder to step up for this project was ONGC. ONGC is one of the most profitable public sector companies in India. And it earmarked a bulk of the CSR funds for education, and it kept its commitment towards educating, skilling Indian with the youth. So here you see a slide where so I call this slide a circle of development, where the blue part becomes the CSR part as per the law. As per the law, if you earn or skill anybody in CSR, you cannot add to the bottom of the profit of that, the company who is funding. So this circle of life, the blue is the CSR part, the yellow and the brown becomes the sustainability and scalability part. We started by getting funding from ONGC, and we moved on. And then we realized that these children, so we got the funding from CSR. We set up a little school on fashion designing. We got the machines, got the trainers, to realize that if there is no quality in the work that they do, it is an effort which is futile. The money is wasted, the time is wasted. In the end, when the course finishes and there is no quality in the work and the designs that the learners beneficiaries are able to produce, then it is futile. So we roped in another corporate. The agenda or the aim of that corporate CSR policy was to get quality in everything that they do. So we got this corporate to add value to our already existing course on fashion designing. later to realize that just putting quality in the products, you also need the aesthetics bit. You need to know the color palette, the cuts, the designs. So we roped in another stakeholder, a very renowned fashion designer, and we told them to come and contribute pro bono in this project. And how did I define the WIFM for her? So the what's in it for me, for the designer, was that you are getting to contribute to a national project for nation building. The sentiment of nationalism is very strong in all of us. And what would she get? She would get a lot of marketing, recognition, and brand building if this project was a success. Luckily, she agreed, and she trained our beneficiaries on color palettes and cuts and designs. The third step, we realized that it's not enough to just train them and skill them on a certain things. They can be entrepreneurs or good service people, and if they know how to keep the books of accounts, what is the profit and loss? So then we moved on. We went to the World Trade Center. What is World Trade Center's aim? Their vision is to provide X percentage of GDP to the bottom of the pyramid. So they've promised the Prime Minister of India that I'm going to increase the GDP at the bottom of the pyramid by this percentage. So here is an opportunity. Come pro bono, put in a module, supplement the already existing CSR project through a module on books of accounts, of profit and loss training. How do I define the WIFM for World Trade Center? Why would anybody do pro bono work, that too in a place like Kashmir, right? So we had to tell them, we had to define the WIFM for WTC as well, and I'll tell you later how. Then we realized for an average Kashmiri girl to get out of her house to come to this training center is a big deal. It is very dangerous to get out of the house. She has only 3 to 4 hours during the day, I think 10 to 3, to get out and do her stuff. After that, it becomes extremely dangerous. So how do I make it exciting for the beneficiary to come out and join the training center? We gave it credibility. We gave it recognition. We got certification from NSDC, which is the National Skill Development Council of India, and ASSOCHAM. And then this entire project was put into place. There were training happening. The training happens. It is still happening right now. And there was a culmination of CSR. They were giving certificates, and the course stopped. So is it enough to train them and then just let them be in a place like Kashmir? What will happen? Training has raised their expectations. They know the work, and now they don't have a job. They don't know what to do about it. So the next round, the initiative doesn't end in the blue part. We had to make the circle, the entire circle. So then what we did, we tapped into the national schemes set up by the government: Stand Up India, Make in India, Start Up India. So we got these women together to make cooperatives, and then we got the corporates and WTC down there to come and give work to these corporates, to tell them what they want, and then create a revenue sharing model, help them set up kiosks. So products were made and services were provided. They were skilled for services, which led to them being entrepreneurs and getting job. Had we stopped at teaching the students, say, basic tailoring, we would have failed them. For they not only needed to acquire a skill, but they also needed to acquire a competitive skill. In the course of a year, around 700 youth have been provided this training. At the CHINAR JAWAN CLUB, pushing back, an existence of drugs and cross-border terrorism, many of these young people went to start their own self-employment initiative in the valley. Many others found employment in their sectors in various cities of the state and the country. And yet soon I was to realize that the project under Operation Sadbhavna at Baramulla was so much more than a professional challenge for me. It was also my personal tryst to rebuild my life, to shake off the shadows of trauma and forge a new future for myself. For me as a woman, the project at Baramulla was a definitive shove out of the so-called comfort zone that the society confines women in. I traveled alone to most unstable region of the country, facing the very real threat of violence and death. I worked alongside the Indian Army, a predominantly male organization, although thorough gentlemen. And I sought to make a difference in the lives of people who live at the very edge of the country, physically as well as metaphorically. A few years ago, when I had decided to opt out of a personal trauma that left me scarred with low self-esteem and guilt, ostracized me for failing to fulfill traditional role of an Indian woman, and I had left me emotionally and financially broke as well. A skilling and education, a postgraduate course at the United Nations University steered me gradually to a future in which I could decide my course of life. My work with the youth of Kashmir was also my endeavor to rise from the ashes. I realized how deeply invested I was in this project when a talented teenager gave me this painting. We will have the painting picture soon. Desperation was writ large in his drug-dazed eyes. "Save me," he told me. I looked at his face and at the face of other kids around me and thought, no, I'm not going to save you. No, we, you and I, we are going to save ourselves and reclaim our lives, our destinies. And I will quote from the Upanishads, "Tamso ma jyotirgamaya." Together we shall from darkness unto light. Let us once again place our trust in the youth. If the young have choice to decide their future, they are likely to adopt those activities, those vocations that not only provide them with a livelihood, but also keep them and their families safe and out of the conflict. Coming back to the picture of the embroidery. It was made by Shafia Ramzan, a fashion designing graduate I had lunch with. After successfully completing her training at the CHINAR JAWAN CLUB, Shafia now runs a fashion boutique. That's Shafia, I'm so proud of her, where she blends the centuries-old Kashmiri tradition of exquisite embroidery with contemporary styles to create attractive outfits. Shafia is also training other women, housewives, to become earning individuals. It's a CSR initiative that helps Shafia reclaim her life and give her hope. Now she's helping other women achieve the same. And I'll close with Tamso ma jyotirgamaya. Shafia and her sisters in Kashmir walk from darkness unto light, sustained by the promise of peace and hope. Thank you.